Welcome to Restoring Men in History. We've got a bunch of fantastic Whitney Webb clips. Tyranny versus freedom. AI, how is that going to impact your life? We've got about 11 clips for you today. We just did a piece with Whitney Webb on digital ID. So this ties to digital ID, digital currency, AI. How do they want to diminish your minds? Let's go into clip one, go.
Well, I think people have been increasingly normalized to the dissolution between the digital and virtual worlds, and that's not by coincidence. So going back to the World Economic Forum, the goal of the WEF's so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution is to blur those lines.
All right, so AI says the Fourth Industrial Revolution is a technological shift characterized by a fusion of what? Physical, digital, and biological technologies such as AI, robotics, and the Internet of Things. Let's go on to the next clip, go.
Very overtly. And so, what we're seeing here are stepping stones leading us to an increasingly encroaching all digital system. And it probably began some time ago. I'm sure you remember several years ago, Mohammed bin Salman, for example, gave citizenship to a robot, and that was kind of framed as novel. But there's been an effort to normalize these kinds of things with respect to the government. So now they're having AI run the government under the guise that it's more efficient, it's more trustworthy, and all of that. But again, who is accountable if the AI makes a mistake? Because AI does make mistakes. AI also hallucinates and returns results that are essentially indicative of an irreality, something that is completely not true. And so who is accountable in those cases? Can they hold the AI minister directly accountable? Not really. Does the accountability fall to the person who programmed the AI? It obviously opens up a pretty sticky situation. But I would, in the case of this, argue that this is in furtherance of an agenda that was actually laid out by Henry Kissinger and Eric Schmidt in their book. I forget what it's called. Sorry about that. But they wrote a couple books on AI. In the earlier one, I think it's AI and Our Human Future is the subtitle, or The Age of AI, something like that. They essentially argue that we should put AI in charge of government because they assume, they obviously believe that AI is a form of a super intelligence, therefore it knows better than humans do. And so even when it returns these unreal, irreality results, we should take that as a sign that it can see things humans cannot see.
So what did we not want here in America? We wanted freedom. We did not want a king. We nixed that. We did not want a strong centralized government. We nixed that. We did not want a big parliament. We broke away from that. We said, no, we're going to do what? What did we want? We wanted self-rule. We wanted to determine our lives and make our decisions, and we still want that. So we don't want an AI run it, or the men behind AI programming it running it with their biases. The technocrats, we don't want them running our lives, controlling everything from some globalist center or technocratic center. Right? Or some wannabe gods running it behind the AI. We actually need the opposite to happen, but we'll go into that later. We actually need to restore and return to limited government. But let's go on to the next clip. But before we do that, if you like this subject, please subscribe, like, and comment. Now let's go on to the next clip.
To that, Kissinger and Schmidt laid out that their biggest interest in AI was its impact on human perception. And ultimately, if you're able to completely control how people perceive reality, you control their behavior. You don't need mind control at the end of the day, or any of these things in the back that the CIA and national security agencies were experimenting with. You don't need that if you can completely control their perception of what's going on. And so the goal, as they lay out here, or laid out in that book, is to have people rely on AI for their perception of essentially everything. And that eventually, by doing so, people would be what the term they used was cognitively diminished, to the point that they wouldn't be able to understand how AI acts upon them anymore. But that wouldn't be true for everyone. There would be a small class that is not affected that way, and they would be the class that programs and maintains the AI, determines what it does. But the rest of us, a large underclass would be acted upon by the AI, but again, lose the mental capacity to understand what it's doing to them. And that eventually it would start determining their preferences for them and all sorts.
This is such evil.
Now, I think this is hugely important for the future. They're going to try to control perception. They say it. And you got to listen to these people. When they say they want to do it, they want to do it, right? So think about this one. How much time spent on the internet, how they can create AI videos, how they use propaganda, the powers that be we're talking about, virtual reality, games, everything on the internet, sitting in a room alone where you don't have a physical person you're meeting all the time. Think of the potential for controlling your perception with videos, new stories. You need the physical. Think about how they could diminish your mind with AI, which has already happened. We just did a video a while back, though, where I'd read this study of where it's already decreased creativity in humans to use AI, decreased thinking capabilities, and I've talked to people about it. They've said it's affected their own thinking, and talked to a teacher about it. She said it had done that to her students. So, but the main pieces are that research study that I looked at, which is more wide than just having anecdotal information. So, if certain groups and individuals want to control your perception, what can you do to avoid that? Well, you can get on sites that aren't controlled with them possibly, or invent them. Or another option is to meet people in real life, right? Hard to fool you with real, tangible people in front of you discussing ideas that share your values and virtues. So get in a community, be active in your community. Have really good friends that you meet once a month in a small group where you talk about these ideas and share them, so that if you're getting all these blasts and videos later in the future, you have someone to say, I'm not crazy, right? Let's go on to the next clip, go.
Yeah, well, the term, that gets thrown around a lot for this is post-human future, but what is more evil to humanity than that?
Right.
Just eliminating us and turning us into what some of these libertarian oligarchs called technoplastic beings. I mean, some of them think that humans are nothing more than bootloaders for digital intelligence. I mean, that's how we are perceived by a lot of these tech oligarchs, because again, a lot of their goal, and they've been relatively open about this, is to live forever, but in defiance of natural law. So using technology to allow them to become gods.
So yes, some of them want to be God. So what do you need to do? You need to be alert, aware, think, critical thinking skills. Some of them want to become God and control what you eat, how you live, what you do. You can't drive a car, right? There's the people that said you're not going to drive a car. There's the people that said that you're not going to red meat. We're going to, protect the climate and to control you, right? Never bought it for the climate. It's to control you, right? So there are wannabe gods who want to control everything and have it all and own it all. You will own nothing and be happy. You got to listen to these people. When they say it, they mean it. So we need to be alert and aware and prevent that. Let's go on to the next clip. Go.
A lot of these tech oligarchs, including like the co-founders of Google, have been pretty open about that. And even someone like Jeffrey Epstein, for example, who was very interested in eugenics and AI and all of that, was interested in those technologies for those same ends. I mean, there's a whole group of, I would call them pretty sick billionaires who want to use this technology to better themselves in that way and live forever, while the rest of us become cognitively incapable of questioning what ultimately is amount to slavery.
So this is a big deal. You've got to say no, because they want slavery, serfs and lords, right? So how do you say no? Here's the federal government has now spent so much money and spent $37 trillion and created a tax on you and inflation because of the size and scope of the federal government, which we need to restrain. So first of all, we need to restrain the federal government. What can you do personally? People are living paycheck to paycheck because of the way the federal government has operated, but that's part of it. You've read, you've seen what they say. And who's it up to? The main reason we're doing all these clips today is who's it up to? It's up to us, right? We've got to say no. So how do you say no? That's difficult. That is a challenge if people are paycheck to paycheck. If the federal government keeps spending trillions, that's a challenge because it's difficult to live, difficult to buy a home, right? You've got older people doing reverse mortgages. That's terrible. So you've got all groups of people, not just young people can't buy a house. Older people are doing reverse mortgages and going back to work. In the middle, I just read a piece on middle-aged Americans making much less and working much harder than they used to. So that's bad for all age groups as far as being able to say no to digital ID, no to digital currency, right? So you got to prepare the best you can, and that's difficult if you want to be able to say no. Food prices so high, why? They spent $37 trillion. If you spend that much, it's a tax and inflation. The federal government get involved in your health care. What happened with Obamacare? Premiums went up for the average worker and the hard worker. Medicare, government got involved. By the way, they weren't enumerated with a power to even be in health care. They weren't enumerated to be in education. They guaranteed student loans, your cost went up, right? So that's a huge issue we've got to, and the diagnosis is you got to restrain the federal government and pull them back so you have more money. But that's not for today, really. Let's keep talking about this particular circumstance right now. Let's go on to the next clip. Go.
A lot, because when I'm talking about these systems, it's obviously dark and it's obviously wrong. But again, like I said earlier, I don't think it's hopeless, because they are spending so much money and so much energy on getting us to consent to these policies. You can build these digital systems that once you're in them will imprison you. But if no one uses these systems, they can't do anything. So there's a lot of efforts, for example, to implement them on existing user bases of massive social media websites. For example, but if people decline to use it, or people leave these platforms, or stop using these, certain digital infrastructure tied to these people, it will collapse.
So again, if no one uses the system, what happens? It collapses. But to do that, we got to be prepared, and it's going to be difficult. So you got to prepare now if you want to opt out. And what are the alternatives? Where are you going to go on the internet? What are you going to do? You got to figure this out. This could be its own video of how to prepare. Let's go on to the next clip, though. But keep in mind, when the government comes up with creates a problem, government creates a problem, then they have a solution and they make it worse for you in your life, for most people, right? For most people. When the federal government enters education, tuition goes up when they guarantee the loans. Government got involved in healthcare, and what happened? It increased the cost, right? Medicare, Medicaid, Obamacare. Let's go on to the next clip.
What are the ones we should be avoiding right now?
Well, I think people should do their own research and look at who owns what. But a lot of these billionaires, you have, people like Larry Ellison and Eric Schmidt, the Google guys, people like Peter Omidyar, who were on the left, Reid Hoffman, Bill Gates, right? And then you have, people like Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and the PayPal mafia crowd. Most of them frame themselves as libertarian. If you look at their philosophy, their own words, they're overtly transhumanist. A lot of them, despite saying things to the contrary, want global government in some form. And, the ones on the supposedly libertarian side frame it as having a CEO in charge of everything. But
so again, be aware of what these individuals, people, and factions are saying, and do what? We said this in the last video. Don't just look at the person. Listen to what they're saying and analyze their policies. If these policies are going to take you to a bigger federal government, we don't want it. If it's going to take it to more control and power over you, we don't want it. If you're going to have less control, less choices, we don't want it, right? We don't want digital ID. We don't want a government-sponsored, affiliated government currency, digital currency, a digital currency. Also, believe them when they say it. These globalists, these technocrats, when they say they want control, you can pull up that pass. We put it in the last video, Larry Ellison talking about surveillance and control. They tell you what they want. So a lot of people say it's conspiracy theory, it's preposterous, but they say it and they mean it. So we might do videos on good success tips from some of these men, but we don't want digital ID and some kind of sponsored digital currency that ties it to a social credit score. Let's go on to the next clip, number 8, go.
And so I think we're at a crossroads, and have been for several years, where those of us that don't want to walk into this have to actively build alternatives. And if you don't have, a ton of people in your community doing that, maybe you should reach out and build awareness. But if you have people that are aware of this around you, it's important to build, I would argue, local resilient networks that don't depend on this infrastructure. There's still open source alternatives to a lot of the big tech platforms out there, and I still think I'm still hopeful that there is time. But ultimately, at the end of the day, if they're pushing us towards a post-human future, I think at some point people will realize that they don't want to lose what makes us human.
So you got to actively build alternatives, right? If you want whatever you're wanting to do, don't be dependent on them. She's talking about build local networks. We talk about that all the time here. Get in a men's group if you're a man. One that matches your values and virtues that you meet with and talk about ideas with. So she states there are open source alternatives to big tech platforms. So get in your group and talk about how you find alternatives to communicate and have that prepared ahead. Let's go on to the next clip, number 9, go.
And so much of what we're being pushed to use AI for are creative pursuits that help define us as human, right? Making art, making music, writing. These are the things that we're being told to outsource to artificial intelligence, not necessarily the tedious stuff, right? So what's going to be left for us when we outsource of this all to AI? Will we allow ourselves to be cognitively diminished to the point that we can't even create anymore? And then what kind of, humans are we at that point? So I think it's very important to encourage analog alternatives to that kind of stuff and to engage in creativity. And there's a lot of opportunity for that, especially.
So what makes us human? So it's scary. They sold it as it's going to be for the menial task, but it's become for the creative task, right? So we need to keep creating because your creative mind is important. We need to keep reading good books. Your mind is important. They want to diminish the powers that be, your mind. We can't let them do that. Keep creating, keep writing, paint, do art. That's part of what makes you human in free will. You get to choose, not the AI oligarchy telling you what to do. Let's go on to the next clip, go.
It's not just with that too. I mean, that is the idea of taking active responsibility for things in your life. And we need to do more of that. And culturally, Americans have been the best at that for a very long time. But there have been a lot of efforts to condition us out of that. And a lot of it has been through this effort to cultivate the importance of comfort above all else and convenience. The idea of rugged individualism in the US, unfortunately, has been, greatly reduced. And I think it's important for us to take active responsibility because, the pull of AI is to get is for us to be passive and do nothing and just let it wash over us. And, you don't have to do that anymore. AI can do that. And AI can do this for you and this and that.
What happened during COVID? And never forget it, what the powers that be did to you, only for you, not for them, right? The rules, they wrote them for you, not for them. They didn't follow them. Number 2, convenience and comfort. You heard about this? People were saying, well, I just want to fly, Chuck. I just want to go there. I'll put on the mask. I'll take the jab because I want to travel. And that's how they get it. Convenience and comfort. Don't go in for it. And I hear it all the time. AI can do this and that. If you use AI too much, well, we'll go into that in a second. So it's up to us to do what? To not comply and to stand and to be prepared for it. Let's go on to the next clip. The last one, go.
Is there anything do you use AI at all for anything?
No.
Nothing. You're completely off it. You don't use it.
No, I'm uninterested in using it. It wasn't always around. I'm 35 now, and when I was in university, there was no AI. I learned how to write and do what I do now without it. So why would I need it? Especially when I'm aware that the whole idea, if you don't use it, you lose it. So I stop, let's say, for example, a person who does work similar to me stops researching, has AI do their research for them. Well, they'll come back in a year or two and be like, wow, I kind of forgot how to do this. I don't remember how to do it anymore. It's gotten a lot harder for me, right? The same idea if you stop doing mental math because you're constantly reliant on a calculator. It gets harder. That's the idea of cognitive diminishment.
Ray
And-
Kurzweil.
So how was she using AI? Very little. I use it very little. Sometimes I'll pull up a bunch of articles, but then I will click in and actually read the article, right? So you want to continue to write yourself, you want to continue to read good books, and you want to do what? Prepare your mind for the future and keep your mind sharp, and you want to be a critical thinker because that's going to be a key. And you want to be out with people. Why? You want to build a community. You want to have friends you meet in person for what? Protecting your perception of reality, as well as having a community to support you, share ideas with, share stuff with, in case of an emergency. Be more what? Self-sufficient. As self-sufficient as you can so that you don't have to comply and so you can say, no, I know it's difficult because a lot of people are paycheck to paycheck. The way this government spends trillions, it's creating a tax on you. But anyway, do the best you can. Don't comply and prepare the best you can. Thank you. If you like this subject, like, subscribe, and comment. Thanks.